Today we are talking about different forms of marriage, being the suffix for gamous, monogamous, and polygamous, being married to one person. We know this one, monogamy, and then two forms of polygamy. So monogamy, we know and love, one person being married to one person. And I would first like to point out that this forms not only, of course, the majority of marriages in our own society, but majority of marriages in most societies around the world are done on this one-on-one basis. Polygamy, of course, means being married to more than one person at a time. And polygyny technically is when a man is married to more than one woman. And this form is relatively common in the sense that most of the world's societies, or a majority of the world's societies, have permitted it as a marriage form. And so when people are thinking about polygamy, they're usually thinking about polygyny. Even in societies where this form of marriage is permitted, and even in some ways held up as a possible ideal, most of the marriages are going to be monogamous. And the reason for that is that in most societies where polygyny is permitted, it is only permitted under certain conditions, which is that the person has to be able to provide for the wives that he has. In some societies, it means that you have to be able to have a separate house for each wife. Now, for those of you who've been trying to get to one house, you know that having two houses is going to be hard to do. So it's really only the most wealthy members of the society that are able to actually carry this out. So it's something that has, been in some ways in decline, and in other ways is only done at kind of at the top of the society. So it's seen sometimes as an ideal or as advantageous, in part because it's linked to social class and wealth. Now, a lot of this, the deal about marriage is people get very, I guess, marriage is very connected to our ideas of who we are and morality and these kinds of things. And several of you in your quizzes felt obliged to tell me that you would never do this. Don't worry, I am not telling you that you need to be in a polyandrous relationship or a polyandrous marriage. I'm not preaching that, and don't tell anybody that I was, because I wasn't. I'm not advocating for any of these things. I'm not saying we should do them. We're just trying to explain why people might do them, might think of them as okay, and what they might think about in terms of morality. So on the question of morality, we often get down on people who have allowed polygamous unions, and we think it's immoral. And some of those societies would turn back to us and say, well, you guys say you're monogamous, but what you really have is what we call serial monogamy. You're married to one person at a time, and then you go on to the next person. Many of us learn how to do this in college. Have one relationship at a time, and then we go on to the next person. And they'll say, yeah, you guys are all super Christian, aren't you? That super Christian president that you had when was that? 2016 to 2020, when there was this president. How many man, that guy set the standard for serial monogamy, at least 3 wives. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is the morality stuff, I don't know if we have a monopoly on the morality. Formal polyandry, where one woman is married to more than one man, is one of the rarest systems institutionally. And even in the societies where it has been practiced, it's a relatively rare form of marriage. So in the article that I gave you about Tibetan polyandry, please do not think that most people in Tibet are polyandrous. This is a fairly a certain region of Tibet and a certain very specific case in which they do this. There are some people who argue that polyandry was more prevalent in older times. We read about the second fathers and third fathers idea, and so that might be considered to be not a formal form of polyandry, but a way in which people mobilize those kinds of resources. But as an institutional system, it's very rare. So I asked you to think about, you know, why would people do this and why it seems kind of weird and probably a little bit icky. And so one of the things that people might speculate on is that there aren't enough women to go around. There's not enough women there, so they have to do this polyandry thing. And then we might think, wow, they might be selective infanticide. Maybe the females are being eliminated early on. What do you think? Does this work? I mean, is this the explanation? No. Why, Liam?
Oh, well, I'm gonna go with in prehistoric human times.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be more efficient to have, you know, one female that is continuing the cycle of becoming pregnant and everything, with multiple men to, you know, create genetic diversity, therefore more people, more diverse, and that can only go good.
That can only go good. I mean, there have been instances of female infanticide. It does happen. It usually happens under very certain conditions, and probably, as Liam has said, probably not so much in prehistory. It usually happens in more settled class-based societies in which inheritance is being passed down. But certainly in this case, in Tibet, where we're talking about, it is not explained by infanticide because they don't have, it might occur, but it's not something that they're institutionally practicing. We can also turn to the demographics of this society. Are there enough women around? Mickey? It's like 50-50. And in fact, we even have unmarried women. So there's no demographic evidence. It's not that you can count up and say, aha, they've started to practice this because they don't have enough women. In fact, there are women who are adults, unmarried, and there they are. In fact, I hate the subtitle of this article. Among Tibetans, relegates many women to spinsterhood, which is, don't use that term. It's a terrible term, but yeah, there are women who are not married who are adults in this society. So there's not a demographic evidence for this. Another explanation for polyandry might be that it keeps people from going hungry, prevents people from starving because there's not going to be that many people. What would Goldstein say about this? Yeah, right. Yeah, very good. So basically, if it were to prevent the starvation, it would be practiced among the poorest people, and it's not practiced among the poorest people. And that goes with another possible explanation, and he's got that nice little graphic where he shows you how it actually does regulate the population. Because if you have more than one man, or more than one man married to the same wife, you don't get your population spread out as much. And he says that this actually does work. It does regulate the population, But that's not why they don't perceive, they don't see that as a goal, and they're not actually trying to promote that idea. And so it can't be the explanation for why they're doing it. So we now get to this, why would people do polyandry? The first thing is we might notice is this is fraternal polyandry. Ah, yes, that word, fraternal, the frats, brothers. It is almost always a thing that is done with a family or brothers. So why would brothers share a wife? Several of you got this, but Onyx also told us, right? In other words, it's in order to avoid splitting up your land, having to divide it all and divide all your stuff. So it's actually not the poorest because they don't have land to divide, so they don't have to worry about that. It's not actually also the richest because they have plenty of stuff, so it doesn't really matter. It's kind of this, well, you might call a middle strata who are looking to get, you know, the good life, a better standard of living, or trying to preserve their place in society. So a lot of them don't, they say it's not exactly something that they would want to do, but it does help them to preserve their standing in society. And Goldstein says that it's like what the English used to do. I'm sure I don't think they do this anymore. 100, 150, 200 years ago, historically, where the oldest son would get the inheritance. And so then that person gets all the stuff and the family is line and everything is preserved. In the English case, then the next son had to go join the military and the other son had to join the priesthood because they didn't get the stuff. So there's lots of great novels about what happens to the people in the society where this happens. But what he's saying is that it may seem like some sort of strange custom, but it's actually not that unusual or not that different from what has been done in societies, in different societies and societies close to ours. Nicole, you were onto this because why? What is marriage about anyway? Oh boy, okay, I wasn't expecting that, but sure, let's go with that. Marriage is about money. So traditionally, marriage has a lot to do with money, with being able to keep your resources in one place, with being able to pass them on legitimately to the next, to your legitimate heirs. And if we're in sort of kings and queens time, making alliances with other groups, you know, sending out somebody to be, we must have seen movies about this where you have to get married to somebody because the kingdoms are coming together. And this can happen at a smaller level as well, where people try to, like, you know, make alliances between different towns or business groups or political parties. And so this is something that marriage has for a long time organized. Now you may be wondering, wait a second, what about, why should we get married? What's marriage supposed to be about? No, come on, why do you get married? For reals. Yeah.
It's supposed to be about spending your life with someone that
You like, oh my gosh, the cynicism, the overriding cynicism here. Oh my gosh, it's killing me. First somebody said it's all about money, and now it's supposed to be someone you like.
Okay, give me an example where someone has gotten married, they love each other for 80 years, fully, nothing ever wrong ever happens. Love isn't a constant. You fall in love, you fall out of love, you fall back in love, you fall out of love, you fall back in love again. Like, it's terrible. That's all I got.
Whoa. Those Massachusetts schools, it's
It's not
Pilgrims and life sucks, man.
Fell in love. It's the most screwed up part of the human brain.
All right, so, okay, we have some strong statements here. First of all, Liam, people, okay, so first of all, I want to say something about love. Love is good and it can happen. Something like the feeling of love may be a human universal. That is to say, you go around in different societies and you know, people have different words and feelings, but people experience this all over the world and through time. But the problem is, and without getting as cynical as some people in this class want to be, the problem is that love is often something that we, how to say, it's kind of fickle. We often use it to get out of relationships as much as we use it to get into one. Has anybody ever fallen in love and had to break up with the person they liked or were in love with before, or had that happen to them? Ah, man, I just saw somebody and yeah, it happens. So in societies that have what we might consider more arrangements of marriage, they would say that romantic love is good, but you should develop it over time. You should fall in love with the person that you're married to over an extended period of time, those 80 years, so the ups and downs of life. And at the end of it, you can say we're in love. But as a basis for why you should get married to somebody, whoa, too fickle, too fragile, I don't depend on that. So, yes. Can't comment anymore. So, I was expecting more of a defense of love, but one of the interesting things that we can also use in anthropology to analyze marriage are ideas of what are called endogamy and exogamy, which are relatively large words or multi-syllable words to mean how far in group do you marry and how far out group do you marry. So in all societies, there are rules about how close you can marry. You can't marry too close. You can't get married to your sibling. In all societies, there is something called the incest taboo. There's various ways that people calculate it, but you can't be married too close. But you also don't want to get married to people that are too far away, that are too different than you. And again, all societies have different ideas about who that is. In our own society, we once had laws about that certain so-called races couldn't get married to each other. In fact, some people seem to be weirdly trying to bring back some of those laws. I don't know why, but there they are. But the idea is those people, whoever they are too different than you are. In our society, we have this strange thing where we believe that our marriages are based on love. We actually do believe this despite some people's haranguing that they aren't. We do believe this. But the question is, the other curious fact about our society is statistically, almost all of our marriages, 95% or so, are within the same social class. That is to say, most people who are working class end up getting married to someone else who is working class. Most people who are middle class, the rich people end up marrying other rich people. It's very rare to have a cross-class marriage. It happens, but it's relatively rare. if you want to try it out, try taking somebody home to your parents who is from a radically different social class and just see how it works. See how it works at the dinner table. It can get weird. People have some different ideas about class, but we don't enforce it. We don't tell people. So how do you keep your belief in love while maintaining social class endogamy? How do you make sure? Well, we don't make sure. You don't even have to make sure. How does it happen that people in the same social class find each other and fall in love with each other? Yes.
It's good, I promise.
All right. You did raise your hand this time, so.
So proximity and, the ability to meet is what causes, friendship and or love. So when you're in the same social class, therefore you have more interaction, possibilities. So you see each other more.
You see each other more. Absolutely correct. Your zip code. So who you are going to meet, right? I know that we have all been destined to meet that one special person out of 7 billion people in the world, but how are you going to find that 1 in 7 billion person? You can't. You can only find the people that you're in proximity with, that live, relatively near. So your zip code. And in our country, our zip codes are also very, very, very sorted by social class because of housing prices. So the people who are in your zip code are probably going to be of the same general socioeconomic strata as you are. However, there's a little bit of an issue here, is that how do people find each other and they're in the same social class, but they're from different states or even from different way far away from each other, but yet they find each other and Liam's pointing down at where we are. The other wonderful way to do this is in college, because college is also a place where people basically get sorted out by social class, by tuition levels and SAT scores and all those things. And then you bring them into one place, you fuel it up a little bit with some substances, you get those hormones and things all going together. And so, yes, my wife is from New Jersey and is of Korean American descent. And I'm from Montana and of Italian American descent. How did we get in touch with each other? Well, of course, college, man. College is where this stuff happens. And even though we come from very distinct backgrounds, when our parents got together, they hit it off great. Why? Because social class, because we're on the same class trajectory. So college is one of the great ways that we organize this. And of course, if you don't go to college and just stay in your zip code, then you'll find somebody there and be happy. So what should we say about kinship and marriage? Wrapping up this week. First of all, going back to a crucial lesson from before, kinship, our ideas about relatedness must be continually reinforced. They must be made. They must be active, even if it's born. I'm sure there are people that you're technically related to that you really don't ever maybe even want to see again. So you have to always be reinforcing the kinship stuff. If marriage were simply an output of some natural sex drive that we have, they'd probably look pretty much similar around the world. And we find that they don't. We find that people have called all different ways of organizing their sexuality and their gender and their marriages and their kinship. And we don't seem to be able to explain that by biology, which is messier than we thought anyway. We don't think that there's any one universal pattern, and there's not some sort of evolutionary stage development here. So there's all different kinds of ways that people do these things. Again, I'm not saying we should do them any particular way. I'm just asking us to understand why people might do things in some different way. However, before we get too celebratory of any one or different ways in which people organize their kinship and marriage, we should be aware that within these domestic relationships is often where some of our most painful moments of inequality and power happen, where people try to tell each other what to do and how to behave and limit their access to resources, how people get constrained. People want to cut off people's access to being able to control their own bodily destiny in various ways. These are places in which people have constructed various laws, rules, and things that either establish or reinforce some of our most egregious social inequalities. And people make laws about who can marry whom and what you have to do if you have a kinship relationship with someone. So it's something we always just want to have in our mind, that anthropology teaches us that, yes, there's a lot of different ways that people do this, but it also can be something that can be very unequal for the people involved. Questions?